Good evening and welcome. My name is Alan Tuchtenhagen, and I'm the director of the Master of Arts and Leadership program. So glad you're all here tonight. This is so great to see you. It's nice to be here. And you're all such an important part of Augsburg College, and specifically the Master of Arts and Leadership program. And I've had a chance to meet so many of you tonight who I've heard your names referred to, heard your reputation referred to, whatever. A lot of you are alumni here. We've got a number of faculty and staff and others. And it's just great to see you all here tonight. This is a 25th anniversary event. It's a big time. And I've been here a little bit over a year, so I've gotten to meet a few of you. But one of the things that I really have felt very strongly is how proud I am to be part of Augsburg College, and especially this Master of Arts and Leadership program, which is such an interesting and neat program. In fact, we've got some buttons out there, the I Love Augsburg buttons that the admissions office has. And if you haven't picked one up yet, grab one before you leave and wear it, especially when you're not on campus. This I love Augsburg's great. 25 years is quite an achievement for any academic program, and ours, not the least of which. I've often said that the MA in Leadership at Augsburg is quintessentially Augsburg. It's a value-centered, interdisciplinary program with a strong liberal arts base. It's really a signature program for this college. As you know, MAL was Augsburg's first graduate program, and several of you here tonight were part of that Genesis. That's Genesis with a small g. Okay. In fact, it's one of its biggest legacies are in the fact that we have over 325 alumni of this program. Many of you are here tonight, so we have some people just doing some great things out there and love it. I want to say a special thanks to Glenda Holstey. Where's Glenda? Glenda's right here, who's the chair of our alumni board. That board does a lot of stuff, and they're going to do a lot more stuff going forward, but Glenda's such an organized person. She's great, and she's been very helpful. I also want to thank the rest of the alumni board for all their help in doing this, and Vicki McNabb was also critical. And then there's Patty Park, and I want to do a special shout out to Patty. Where's Patty? There she is over here, yes. I think you all know Patty. If you don't, you should. If you're an alum of the program, you certainly know who Patty is, and if you're on campus, you know. But she does so much to make this program a significant success. We really owe a lot to her, so thank you, Patty. It's wonderful that so many of you are here as alumni tonight, and there's some things I want to encourage you alums to do, and you who are currently enrolled students. I want to encourage you to stay engaged with us, both in the MAL program and to the institution generally. I ask you to respond to the survey we're going to send out next week. In fact, John Stadler is going to send it out right over here. John's on our alumni board, and he's going to send it to you. So when you get it, please complete it and give us some of that information. That's very helpful for us. I'd like you to continue to refer students and talk about this program. This program, I've noticed since the very beginning when I came here, owes its success to a large degree through networking and people talking to people. Our currently enrolled students and our alumni have been probably the biggest recruiter for this program, and I want to encourage you to continue to do that. And as you need information or want to make referrals of people to us, please feel free to do that. And then, of course, I want to encourage all of you to continue to contribute to the Master of Arts and Leadership Endowment Fund. That's part of the Advancement Office, so you get some more information from us about that too. Tonight you may have noticed that we're featuring Finnegan's Beer. Some of you don't drink beer. You maybe didn't notice the flyers that are out. How many of you, just a show of hands, how many of you know what Finnegan's is about? Okay. A number of you do. Some of you don't know the Finnegan story. The Finnegan story is that it's one of an Augsburg alum. It's an Augie. Jackie Berglund is an alum who started this company because she needed a revenue stream for the nonprofit work that she was doing, and Finnegan's operates specifically to donate money to nonprofit organizations, and the current one is, who told me that earlier? Buffy. What is it? Okay. So I'm doing it. Part of the reason I'm putting it out there is because it's such a, as I've said many times, it's such an Augsburg thing. It's this social entrepreneur example in connection with the community and giving back to the community and all those kinds of things. So anyway, it's a partner. You might have noticed at the table out there, we've got some information about programs, but specifically about the new dual degree MBA, MAL program. And it's a really unique thing, and it's really part of our commitment to continue to meet the professional career needs of our students and our alumni. The one person who's missing tonight is Norma Noonan, and a number of you have asked about her. And when Norma realized that we had a schedule conflict for tonight, she sent me a note and asked that I would read it to you. So here's a note to you from Norma. Dear friends of the MAL program, I'm sorry I cannot be with you tonight. Months ago, I had arranged to go on a study tour of Apulia, a part of Italy where tourists rarely visit. My mother was born in this province and was very excited that I would be visiting this month. As many of you know, Mom passed away in late July, so this brief trip is dedicated to her memory. I hope to see you at future events as we continue to celebrate 25 years of the Master of Arts in Leadership program, Norma Noonan. So I want to thank Norma for that and recognize her many years of working in this program. A few quick housekeeping announcements about how the evening will run tonight. After Gary's talk, Gary will give us a talk. Then we're going to break into pre-assigned groups, and we're going to meet in these circles. And on your name tag, you have a number assigned to you. It says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Circle 1, 2, and we'll go through these again. But we thought Gary's going to give us a nice thought-provoking speech or talk, and before we're done, rather than just go home and think about it, let's sit around and talk about it for a while. I will get up at 8 o'clock and say it's 8 o'clock, and you can quit talking if you want, or you can hang around here if you want. We're going to keep the food going, and as long as there's beer and wine and they're willing to serve it to you back there, we're okay with it. And keep hanging around and process this. We're all about discussing the whole topic of leadership tonight, so we'll have that available to you. So at this time, it's my great honor and pleasure to invite our institutional leader, advocate, and spokesperson, Augsburg's 10th president, Dr. Paul Pribenow, to the podium to introduce our speaker tonight. So, President Pribenow.
Good evening. It is a great privilege to be with you tonight for this great celebration. It's wonderful to see so many of you here. One of the things that really strikes me about this program, and I see it in so many ways when I'm around here on the weekends when students are here, is to look out and see the legends of our teaching faculty who teach in this program from all the different disciplines, from modern languages and sociology and English and political science and education. And what a powerful reminder that this program was born out of this institution's commitment to the liberal arts, and the belief that the liberal arts wasn't just an undergraduate thing. In fact, it's a way of life, and that we can educate people to be leaders and to live their lives with that vision. And I think that in the 21st century, there is perhaps no more relevant vision than our commitment to the liberal arts, to creating people who are informed, who engage otherness, who see the world from a variety of perspectives, who are willing to see the world from a variety of different perspectives, and perhaps to have their mind changed. And to think about how this program has for 25 years educated leaders for our region, for our country who have that perspective is a real gift to me and to this institution and to the world, and in that way is truly an embodiment of this college's mission. I think about 25 years, which we'll celebrate tonight, but also another program that we're celebrating during homecoming. Our weekend college celebrates its 30th anniversary this year. There will be a gathering on Saturday morning for that. And I think about how in 1982, when this college made a commitment to serving adults, working adults primarily, who wanted to come back and finish an undergraduate degree. Think about these two programs that here in this year are celebrating major milestones. These are examples of the innovation that's at the heart of this college's identity and its character. The belief that, in fact, an Augsburg education is worthwhile to more and more people, and that we need to find ways to bring that education to more and more people. And we're proud to have these two emblems, if you will, this weekend that we're celebrating that lift up that commitment. As many of you know, the college just a couple of years ago adopted a new mission statement, and the opening line of that mission statement says that Augsburg College educates students to be informed citizens, thoughtful stewards, critical thinkers, and responsible leaders. How about that? Got it into the mission statement. And it seems to me that at the heart of our life here day in, day out, of course, are all the ways that we're trying to help educate students, whether it's in the classroom or in the residence halls or in student government or in athletics or out in the community, whether it's at the undergraduate or graduate level. How are we living this mission out? And this program, as I said, this MAL program has been a leader in that regard now for its entire 25 years, helping us, in fact, even before this mission statement was articulated, to be a place where we were educating people to be informed citizens, thoughtful stewards, critical thinkers, and responsible leaders. Just three quick ideas that I think are at the heart of an Augsburg kind of perspective on leadership that I would just, I know will resonate for you because I know some of you and I know that the ways that this has made a difference for you. I think you know that out of our Lutheran theological heritage, this concept of vocation or calling is so important. We've made that a central signature of our undergraduate program, as all of our students who come to us as undergraduates are asked to really struggle with the idea of their calling in the world and to understand both how to discern it and then to be equipped to live it out. And it seems to me that one way to think about this program is that whenever you came to us, wherever you were in your careers, you came asking vocational questions. And this program helped to do the same thing for you, to help you to think through, to discern what that vocation, maybe it was a change of job, maybe it was a change of role within a particular organization, and then to be equipped with a way of thinking and the skills that you needed to live that out. So this program helps to live out that central concept at the core of our life. This is also a program that, when I look around this room and understand some of the work you've done, it truly honors the notion of leadership as stewardship. I hear it in the stories that you tell about this being a place that taught you to take stock both of your own gifts, that's part of what the vocational work is about, but it's also to understand the gifts that you've been given as leaders and your responsibility to take care of them. I love to challenge students with this idea of stewardship and to think about what the steward really represents. That is that we are asked, we have the obligation to take care of other people's stuff, and to think about how those gifts are given to us, and we have a chance to, in our leadership, to put those gifts together in ways that actually help institutions to live out their missions and their purposes. The final idea I'd raise up for you is one that is really central to my own understanding of leadership, and one that I think Augsburg also has at its heart, and that is the idea of leadership as paying attention. It's a concept that I first learned about in reading Robert Bella's work, and I know that's a text that you've probably read in this program, whether it was Habits of the Heart or The Good Society. And the last chapter of The Good Society that Bella wrote with his colleagues talks about the fact that paying attention is at the heart of a healthy democracy. That is, that paying attention is about yourself and others learning to attend to the most important things in their lives. And their argument there is that a democracy goes amiss when we don't pay attention, when we don't attend to what's most important. And organizations and communities and neighborhoods and countries can be healthy when we have leaders who help us to pay attention, who bring to our attention, who keep lifting up for us those things that are most valuable in our lives, and challenge us perhaps to put other things aside so that we can pay attention, because we live in a very noisy world full of distractions. And as leaders, we're called within our organizational lives, within our communities, to figure out how we can help folks to pay attention. Pay attention. And again, you can only look around our world these days and our political climate and our social climate and think about how we have that challenge in our lives to help each other pay attention. It's actually one of the themes of my opening convocation address every year now to incoming students, to help them realize that one of the things we're going to teach them is how to pay attention. So vocation, our calling, stewardship, paying attention, just three simple ideas that I see in play both here on campus and I see in the work that you are doing in the world and the kind of leadership that you're providing in your organizations. And I give thanks for that, and I'm so happy that we can be here tonight to celebrate that. So as part of that celebration, as Alan said, we have brought one of those legends of Augsburg College to bring us some remarks. Garry Hesser, the inaugural Martin Sabo Professor of Citizenship and Learning, has taught, as you know, in our sociology and Metro Urban Studies program here at Augsburg for more than 30 years. Garry is someone who has taught me to pay attention. When I first arrived, he was the one that was there reminding me of this college's historic commitments. He was the one there encouraging me out into the neighborhood. He's the one that introduced me to Joel Torstenson to remind me that 60 years ago this college made a commitment to the city. And so really a blessing to have him here this evening and to know that he's going to lead us in a conversation about leadership. Garry was honored in 1997 with the Thomas Ehrlich Award for Leadership in Service Learning, and in 2004 he was named the Minnesota Professor of the Year by the Carnegie Foundation and the Council for Advancement and Support of Education. As the Sabo Professor, a role that he's had for the last several years, Garry's activities have included working with our students, faculty, and staff through the Sabo Center for Citizenship and Learning, helping to encourage student civic engagement and leadership, providing leadership in various campus initiatives to practice democracy and civic engagement, as issues forums and various student programs that he's helped to lead. His collaboration with our annual convocation series, our Christensen and Batalden symposiums, and the ways that he's helped to shape a group of students known as the Sabo Scholars here who are really living out this commitment that we have. He's also someone that tonight I would lift up just one thing about Garry that is so valuable. It really shows the way that he understands that learning and teaching and learning really is about building a community. 4 years ago this week, one of our undergraduate students was killed here in the neighborhood, was murdered down at the Brian Coyle Center. So for many of us, this is a particular bittersweet time because we remember that week after Ahmed Noor Ali was murdered as he came out of the Brian Coyle Center having done his tutoring of his work-study job. And I remember in those terrible days, the aftermath of that, just how difficult that was for this community. And I remember it was Garry who was the one who said to all of us, let me take you back out into the neighborhood. You know, kids who were scared, students who didn't want to go to their jobs down the street because, you know, wow, what's happening in this neighborhood? And Garry was the one that said, I'll walk with you. I'll walk with you back into this neighborhood. And for me, that was a shining moment for this college because, in fact, we didn't retreat back into ourselves. We didn't build fences around our campus. We actually followed Garry back out into the neighborhood. And in that way, we extended this teaching and learning community to include this entire neighborhood. And I would say today, 4 years later, this is a stronger neighborhood because of efforts like Garry's. And so, in many ways, the fact that he's here tonight is a representation of that role that he's played in our lives. And I give great thanks for that. Tonight, Garry is going to lead us in a presentation entitled, if you believe this, George Washington and the Llamas. It is my honor to present to you Professor Garry Hesser.
This evening may be the most humbling and challenging thing I've done in the 35 years here, but I'm honored to be asked to help celebrate this. So let me share, and I've tried to write it out. My wife says, write it, don't wing it. And so I'm trying to honor that coaching I've had from her all these years. In 1796, George Washington sat down to draft his farewell address, a document that holds its own with the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. According to Joseph Ellis, whose book, Founding Brothers, I recommend heartily, he says Washington had three very specific agendas in mind. One, he wanted to demonstrate, like all of us approaching retirement, that he had not lost it, either in his mind or in his abilities. He wanted to carve out a middle course, a moderate tone that unapologetically and clearly addressed the shrill accusations and the loaded language and throbbing moral certainty, sound a bit familiar? Of those who seemed intent on winning the political game to the exclusion of others, including members of his own cabinet. Finally, above all else, he wanted to make his final departure the occasion for laying out his own understanding of what the American Revolution really meant, something he saw as in deep danger. For Washington, it was and always would be hanging together as a united people, much as the Continental Army had hung together before when he was its general, much as the Constitutional Convention had in 1787, both of which he presided over. 4 years earlier, Washington first intended to retire, and he approached James Madison to help him write his valedictory address. Madison was a gifted writer and a thinker whom many think penned most of the Constitution and certainly the Federalist Papers that helped convince people to support the Constitution. Washington also picked Madison because two of his most trusted cabinet members, Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, were part of the warring parties that he wanted to condemn. But the major point I want to make, which frames my reflections tonight, grows out of an age-old debate regarding just who wrote it, whose words were those. And Ellis says it was right in front of everybody's nose. The creation of that farewell address was an inherently collaborative process. Some of the words are Madison's, some were Hamilton's, but all were the ideas of Washington that grew out of a lifetime of conversations and collaborations with these two writers and many others. Madison wrote the first draft after 3 lengthy conversations with Washington, and then it went in the file. And then Hamilton, 4 years later, was given the draft, and he wrote most of the final version. although what we know from the evidence is Washington was still editing and changing lines up until the moment it went to press. Ellis contended, as do I, that this was a metaphor for the kind of leadership that Washington had. It was collective leadership. Washington was always urging on himself and to his successors and to the American people as a whole. Hamilton had experienced this style of leadership as a staff member in the Continental Army, and he had experienced it in the cabinet. And according to Ellis, for Washington, all major decisions were collective, in which each advisor, like spokes on a wheel, spelled out their perspective, often in writing, but in the end, the final decision came together in the center in Washington's thinking. So just what were the central themes so important to Washington? And I hold those up to you tonight along with those furry little critters, the llamas. 1, the importance of subordinating sectional and ideological differences to larger national purposes. 2, not being encumbered by external ties that tied your hand for the flexibility that you needed. And 3, and perhaps the most important thing, got left out of the speech by Hamilton. Hamilton prevailed upon Washington to make his prime idea of a national university in his last State of the Union address. The whole idea of the national university in the new capital was Washington's greatest dream, where young citizens from every state and region would come together and hear, in Washington's words, and by degrees discover that there was not just cause for those jealousies and prejudices which one part of the Union had imbibed upon the other. Washington had seen the opposite happen, especially in his close-up experience with all those young soldiers in the Continental Army, coming from all over the country, as well as the Constitutional Convention, where people, soldiers, and delegates from every region stuck together for a common purpose and accomplished their objectives. So Washington clearly wanted to pass on his legacy and his explanation of the American Revolution and what it meant to him. And at the core, it was that people, with all of their differences, must hang together as a people in his language. Well, I'll return to Washington at the end of my comments on llamas. But I trust you see the implicit, if not explicit, qualities of collaboration and system thinking that played out in Washington's leadership approach, ideas that have been fleshed out by research on and observation and practice of leadership since that time. And now I think I want to suggest playfully but seriously that the acronym LLAMAS captures many of these qualities and adds to them. So we start with the first L, listen, the first among equals. When Larry Spears of the Greenleaf Center compiled his top 10 list of qualities of leadership, right there at the very, very top was listening. Not just passive listening, but on the edge of your seat, leaning forward, engaged listening. And those of you who've been in my creativity and problem-solving class know how deeply influenced I have by Miles Horton, been influenced by Miles Horton in the Highlander Center in Tennessee, where deep listening is practiced almost as a sacred ritual. Deep listening underscores, among other things, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, suggesting that we at least listen twice as much as we talk. Miles Horton and Highlander also remind us that it doesn't come easily. We need to structure and get help and training in order to create social settings and places where real listening and growth can take place. At Highlander, in order to address these tendencies of people like me, who a friend once described, and Garry opened his mouth and began to talk in search of an idea, where we sit at Highlander in rocking chairs, and we engage in deep listening. Each participant around that circle offers her or his response to a question focused on the reason we gathered, with each person's articulation based on their own personal lived experience and current understanding. The norm and the clear expectation as we go around the circle is that no one ever interrupts, finishes sentences, or asks questions. We listen. The second go around more likely might be, okay, What did you learn from the others in their stories and their reflections that added to your understanding of this issue that has brought us together? Native American talking sticks, World Cafe, Art of Hosting are all current movements that are celebrating and trying to give us a structure for how to more effectively listen more deeply to others. It would appear that George Washington, even as an aristocrat, a general, a president, intuitively knew and practiced his own version of deep listening, something I keep reading about in other effective leaders, including our current president. And what's the corollary of listening? Duh, learning. So the second L, Peter Senge, building on the wisdom of his mentors, Donald Schoen and Chris Ardress, all at MIT, George, also expanded on the critical importance of listening if leaders are to turn their workplaces into learning organizations. At the center is a deep listening that results in what Peter Senge would call dialogue. Dialogue is more than just debate or discussion, because those engaged in dialogue engage in listening, but they start with an assumption that the conversation they're about to have and having will indeed transform their thinking. So instead of seeking out conversation partners who will reinforce their perceptions, participants in dialogue anticipate that their understanding will be changed by a dialogical conversation with others. Everyone in the dialogue, to use Senge's language, is trying to have other people help them see their own seeing. Closely linked to listening, as we move on to the A in llamas, is learning to ask questions. If a leader is not genuinely curious and eager to learn what others know and see, I simply doubt that much dialogue or learning or growth will ever happen, or much leadership. At Highlander, one of the primary tasks of the leader facilitator is to frame good questions. Questions that invite group members to learn from their own experience and their current understandings. Paul Tillich, the prominent philosopher and theologian of the 20th century, stressed and contended that good questions were far more valuable than the answers themselves. Or Elie Wiesel once wrote about a mentor who helped him to survive the Holocaust when he said, "He explained to me with great insistence that every question possessed a power that did not lie in the answer." Poetically, Rainier Rilke seems to say it in a slightly different way about the importance of asking. Try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books written in a foreign language. At present, you need to simply live the question. Perhaps you will gradually, without even noticing it, find yourself experiencing the answer. So it's critical that leaders create the settings and the cultures where questions and asking are welcome, safe, and expected. Peter Senge and his colleagues propose that effective leaders engaged in dialogue put their own best thinking and assumptions right out there on the table. And then leaders ask with utmost seriousness that their colleagues and staff help them to see their own seeing, especially its weaknesses and assumptions. Leaders probe as full participants in a group, asking and being asked. It's just this kind of genuine collaboration and openness, paradoxically, done with both self-confidence and humility, that puts flesh, I think, on the first, second, and third letters of Lama. Leadership, I am convinced, requires that leaders authentically engage in listening, learning, and asking. This is not rocket science. But as my friend Ira Harkavy at Penn says, it's far more complicated than rocket science. So, I hope you ask, how does a leader or anyone get from listening, learning, asking, over to the last part of Lama, agency and action? meditate, my friends, meditate. Something else is emerging in the literature and the practice of leadership. Buddhists call it mindfulness, others meditation or deep reflection or prayer. Much to their amazement, many, if not most, of the 200 leaders they interviewed for their book Presence engage regularly in some form, not of random, but disciplined meditation and contemplation. Centering, mindfulness, and letting go of the need to control become both personal and collective practices that Peter Senge and his colleagues underscore for Lama leaders. Senge, who rarely talks about it, walks his own talk. Every morning, he meditates in a disciplined fashion for an hour. The importance of being present and mindfulness is so central to their youth theory of leadership that the title of their book is Presence, and it has given rise to a global movement, the Presencing Institute at MIT. It's supported locally by the Bush Foundation, and you'll find on the website the Commons development. And I've put on the back table, if you're curious about the book, Presence, or about this, you can find information about Otto Scharmer and his colleague. Well, that finally gets us around to the A, the action. My sociological point comes sneakily in, I hope. Prominent sociologist and advisor to prime ministers, Anthony Giddens, along with most sociologists, reminds us that human beings have the capacity for agency. Agency, not a noun, but a verb, we contend, is the gift of being able as individuals and groups to socially construct and reconstruct the realities in which we operate, with one huge caveat. Some people, some groups have a lot more agency, privilege, and power than others. It's not a level playing field. And that's where leadership also comes to play. As Harry Boyd, our colleague here at the Sabo Center, stresses, we're all, especially leaders, called, we can and we should attend to the development of efficacy, not only in ourselves, but in those most affected by a problem. In leadership terms, that means that it's critical for leaders to foster and cultivate a sense of agency in our colleagues so that they also, to quote Harry, come to see themselves as having both the right and the capacity to have a say and an influence in our common work. And it is work, as Harry reminds us, but good work. The authors of Presence are quite specific regarding agency and action. In the context of ongoing listening, learning, asking, and meditating, they emphasize prototyping and institutionalizing. Lama leaders, I am suggesting, engage in and encourage others to experiment, to act, and to fail with a sense of purpose. And this kind of courage and audacity is usually based on both listening to one's inner self as well as the transformational learning that comes through dialogue and listening. Senge and his colleagues underscore why sociologists devote so much of our attention to institutions, those enduring patterns, relationships, structures, and networks that enable humans to address the timeless needs that all societies and communities experience. The U theory, as you could see in the handout, posits a dynamic understanding of institutionalization, and it emphasizes, to quote them, embodying our new insights and realizing them through transforming action and institution. Exercising our agency and emboldening others to do the same can save us from continually reinventing the wheel, because institutionalizing, without succumbing to rigid bureaucracy or formulas, allows us to address what can make society and our organizations more humane, equitable, and just the kind of thing George was talking about earlier about what policies might we create. Prototyping and institutionalizing, when done in the spirit of agency and Lama leadership, embrace and embody a transformational process that is continually renewing and engaging in a never-ending journey. And now as I move toward an end with these comments, note that llamas is plural. As promised, we return to George Washington with a little help from Robert Greenleaf. When asked how one will know that one has been a servant leader, Greenleaf put it this way: do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? So when we come to the first S, it's all about sharing. I know Diane hates that word, but we'll use it here. Sharing is passing it on. Llama leaders share who they are and what they know. George Washington's dream was to pass on a legacy of hanging together as a united people, subordinating sectional and ideological differences to larger national purposes, and mobilizing our differences in ways that indeed might make that new democracy a beacon on the hill worthy of emulating. And Washington was a pretty good sociologist, even though it had not been invented as a discipline. He knew that a vision had to be institutionalized. Washington envisioned that national college where, as noted earlier, young citizens from every state and region, from all walks of life, would come together just as he had experienced with the Army and the Constitutional Convention. Washington espoused such an institution dedicated not only to the growth of individuals who attended, but committed to building democracy and strong, resilient communities marked by that diversity and unity. And this leads to our final letter, the final S. Dynamic institutionalizing requires spaces. Llama leaders like Washington know that there is a need for safe, inviting spaces, environment where creativity, problem solving, and growth can happen. Steve Johnson, in his book that the mayor of St. Paul gave to my wife, who gave it to me, the book is called Where Good Ideas Come From, assessed hundreds, even thousands of inventions, and he concluded that the single most important variable was space. Environments for thinking and networking with others. Yes, you and I as Llama leaders can exercise human agency and, like Washington, create and maintain environments and spaces where we listen and learn, spaces and places for meditation and contemplation, where transformation is more likely to happen, where leaders are equipped to address the complex and complicated and often polarized world in which we live. But I also want to name one reality that is related to space. It's often ignored even by Sangy and Greenleaf, and that's the power word. Llama leaders understand that the symbols and reality of power and privilege are real. With this insight, they seek out or create spaces and privilege that significantly level that playing field, instead of gravitating to spaces that underscore their own power. A simple example: when you want to talk to a colleague, call them on the carpet, or discuss an issue, go to their office. Don't invite them to yours, where all the symbols of your power and authority live. When you want to entertain or have a meeting, consider workspaces out in the work group and not the more opulent conference room in your own office. Llama leaders know that place matters. I've had the good fortune to live with someone for the past 40 years who understands and models this for me and for those with whom she works day in and day out. My favorite new book is entitled, Why Did Jesus, Moses, the Buddha, and Mohammed Cross the Road? Brian McLaurin and I believe that the answer to that question looks a lot like a collection of Llama leaders. We both think that these four would cross the road to find or create a new space, a neutral and a safe space, where they could share with each other learn from each other, meditate, and be transformed in ways that they could and would be better able to build up the next generation of their followers in ways that would lead to harmony and dialogue as their followers engage with those who follow others in a never-ending growth and change. And toward that end, I conclude with an adapted quote at the end of that book. Leaders who are lamas do not leave others where they have been, but neither do they try to bring those that they lead to where they are at the present, as beautiful as that place is or that way of doing things or thinking might be. Rather, Lama leaders invite others to go with them to a place where neither the leader or the followers have ever been before. May we all be so fortunate as to have that reality in our lives.